that.
And even if it's low,
I think
I
so.
give it false. Okay. Cool.
I mean, it should be up a little higher.
Oh.
Sure.
There.
I got like little cotton balls on them.
They have what?
The little cotton balls that they have.
So you can't. Yeah. So it stops
It's
the.
like yeah. What do they call them?
Oh, that's cool right there too. Aren't you a little clever little bastard?
I guess.
Let's talk about stress, baby.
Let's talk about you and me.
Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that will be.
Let's talk about stress.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. It's everything.
But what were you gonna say?
Oh, it's just our the different things that bring the most amount of stress. And the things that bring, I think, the most, like the most acute, the most damaging, the most infecting. Because that's really what stress is. It becomes its own organism. It's to call it a single event and say, well, I'm stressed now. No, that stress builds on stress, builds on
Yeah.
stress, builds on
And
to the
there's
point
reasons
where
of why the stress builds on stress because of how you know how to handle things and how
Yeah.
you think about things and
and it's the most impactful when it's stress you just can't talk about. And that's where things that are generally in the area of like crimes, right? Felonies and misdemeanors is where a lot of that stress is because those are the things we just don't talk about. Right? Relationships. When real stress is happening with your friend, they don't want to disclose to you the
true.
worst stress because of the relationship between her and her husband. When things are really bad with the kids, that relationship stress isn't. And if it ends up being something you do share with your friend, or your family member, or your mom, or your dad, or your sibling, whoever your confidant is, it ends up being filtered through this story, this mythology. And so you're going to get responses and help and support about a real stressful event that's having a real impact, but through this image that just is distorted.
What do you mean by that?
If somebody's going to tell you, hey, we're having marital problems, there has to be a story. Right? Like what? What do you mean by marital problems? Well, she is being this way, is this way.
Yeah.
The easiest way is simply just to label them, diagnose them.
Yeah.
They're bad actors doing bad things or have bad intentions. Not the context of the story that includes where you struggle.
Yeah.
What you're contributing to.
Yeah. Yeah, the factors of the relationship.
Right.
Not the one event.
Right.
Because the stresses are coming from more than just that.
Yeah.
Definitely, I get that. Yeah, that's true.
And any time a family especially has to or does experience violence, it's just shit you don't want to talk about. And there's so much stress with violence, violent words, violent behaviors, violent outcomes. And
It's just layered though with this, through time of this thinking though that if your family does have that, then you're the problem.
Right.
It's embarrassing, or no. There's just shit that needs to be talked about.
except for sometimes they are the problem.
Sure.
That's one of the possibilities
But to
if
hide
you're
it
bringing.
because you're embarrassed and not just talk about
Right.
it and fix the problem is way worse.
Well-
Like you are the problem and you have some problems to fix in your family. Not, it's just too embarrassing to talk about it, so we just keep it within our family.
Well, I'm saying, I don't know that it's better to talk about it fully, because I don't think people have the relationships and the people to actually talk fully about it. That wouldn't be received in fair ways.
Yeah.
They would be judged by that person, and they know that. So it's the right evaluation. The point is
layered on actually what happens.
Yeah, the point is you've got this. I need to tell it. I can't not tell it, right? I can't not tell it. And so you tell a portion of it, and then you're all searching for the solution to a problem that doesn't actually exist. And that summarizes modern cognitive therapy.
Yes, that.
I would like to solve this solution. Let me tell you a version of this and give me the solution to that. Not only are these people not qualified, they're operating from a false system to begin with, but they're only as good as the ability to get a full and fair report, and then to evaluate that report as to what actually happened.
That is exactly true.
Stress. And that's just the inability to fully articulate, fully process any stressful experience leaves stress behind.
Mm-hmm. And part of the stress, I think, is it's how we even remember our stories. During stress,
absolutely,
our implicit and explicit memories, we're kind of even fooled by our own story of what happened, which causes the stress of it. So, and this is why when you can work through a memory with people or an experience with people to help them bring back the full memory of it, writing.
Right.
Because then we sit and worry about what happened when there were pieces that we, right? And so the stress becomes this pathological stress of, oh my gosh, how could that not have happened to me? Well, let's go back and think about the whole thing, and it did, and this is how come it didn't, so you can move on.
Pathological stress, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's pathological, it's destructive, it's that.
Yeah.
Because there is good stress. There's that creative, rehabilitative stress that's different than that pathological. And that's why we say, the things that don't kill you make you stronger. No, sometimes they make you weaker and worse.
They do. However, you can, for many people, you can retrain that stress to become a healthy stress. It's still there. It's not like we think therapy should be able to wipe all the stress away. No, it's you retrain your brain how to think about it and how to think through it, and that's it. And then it becomes, yes, it's part of your story, but it's instead of focusing on the stress, we have it all wrong.
All wrong.
And there's tools, but it's you have to know the tools.
Well,
and like you said, be around people that be around people that you can confide in and talk through, because there are real shit that needs to be talked through, and a lot of it is embarrassing. You have to have a confidant that can listen to those embarrassing parts too, and not, like you said, not many people have that.
Where you're not the hero in every story. It's interesting you're talking about their ability to remember, and memory is a part of the stress, and it's, we get so caught up in whether or not something's a lie or not. If it didn't happen, if it isn't actual, then it's a lie. And that's not what these people are doing. Nobody's going to their therapist or their friend or their mom and dad or everyone saying, I would like to intentionally mislead you.
Yeah, you're right.
I would like to lie to you. They are presenting a narrative that they have experienced and that they have filtered. But you're right, it's the way it's perceived and retained and then communicated is and then you add to that, any stressful event brings amnesia.
Yep.
Tunnel vision in experiencing it, and the inability to lock it in.
And the worst thing we do is not talk about it, because then we do lock in the wrong parts, and we lock in those wrong memories. Not the wrong memories, that's not the right way to say it, but yes, it allows, because then you have to do it all by yourself, and of course the ones you go to are the scary and the worst parts of it. And
think about it. If you're in tunnel vision, you're not picking up all of your awareness is fixed to a survival mode, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fuck, fawn, flop, right? Your tunnel vision, you're not getting all the information. You are getting real information, but it's distorted because it's out of context with the other stuff that you didn't have access to in that moment. And it's so not just about picking up the signal, or it starts there. It's not just about retaining the signal. The signal was never picked up because fight, flight, freeze, fuck, flop, on.
And when the stress happens to young children, they're not ever, their brain develops through this stress, and they're not able to put words. They didn't have those words or the context to their experience. And that's why it becomes a stressful PTSD, because then they grow up, their brain continues to develop, right? And then they start to understand perspective, but they can't put theirs into perspective.
Yeah,
They can't, because it was like working with a teenager, right? That she's able to give me these things that happened, and that was just, it was that my life. Well, tell me more about your life then. And there was there's other pieces of your life, and then there was good, and then there was this good, and this good, and this good, this bad too. Yeah, those all happened around the same time. This was what was happening in your life, your home, with your friends, through the separation of your parents, all that stuff. Oh, because now as an older brain, they can see, oh, that is what happens in life, right? Your life is bigger than that. Because I get yelled at 3 times a week, but then there's all these other good memories that I forgot about. Or I'm sorry, there was yelling in the home or whatever, fighting, right? But then there's all these other, oh, that's right, there was some healthy. I'm getting stuck in the scary part. Oh. And then as they grow up, they're able to put words to their stories and right, perspective to their own story. But what you said, the problem is we get stuck, and our mind gets stuck there, but then we grow up and can put perspective to everything else, and everyone else's problems, but mine's the worst because I'm, and now I react this way when I hear and it would have been so easy if somebody just helped children, right, get through an experience with language.
Right. Yeah, and when that stress remains, it does, it keeps you in survival mode, because it's you're always in survival mode from that stress causing event, right? It's just always there. You know, so when you're talking about memory, and you're talking about even that the experience versus an adult brain, you know, a big brain.
It is the big brain.
Big brain, little brain. I mean, it is less components, less activations. I mean, it's big brain, little brain. But the idea of experiencing things 2-dimensionally versus 3-dimensionally, and it's that idea of, right, anxiety is living in a million futures that will never be. Depression is living in a past that no longer is, and that might not even be fully accurate.
Yeah.
That you might not process fully.
Yeah.
Right? That's living in a 2-dimensional space.
Yeah.
It's like reading. It's like being on a screen, watching a TV show, watching a movie, and that's what we're doing when we're trying to process things through our memory, whether it be past or future. It's like trying to watch something on a screen. It's 2-dimensional, and that's why the only way to be present is to perceive and experience things 3-dimensionally. And a big way to do that is, okay, what about now? And the question of anxiety and depression, okay, if so what? And that helps at least bring a little 3-dimension to it. Okay, all these things happen with my parents, with my uncle, brother, boyfriend, girlfriend, ex, child. Okay, if so what? What are your relationships today? We'll start there. If you're saying that it was another being, another person, another loved one, liked one that harms you, did something. What's your relationship today? Not to them.
Yeah.
To
all your relations, the way you
people,
relate to others.
To others.
Your relationships.
So, if so what? Is this experiencing causing you to relate negatively, dysfunctionally, less connecting, disconnective from these people who are important to me, or does it enhance this relationship in some way?
That's a good question, yeah.
Does what I'm worrying about, thinking
Yeah.
about, planning, strategizing about, right? Because it's all that. It's a conspiracy with yourself about your future.
Worry. Yeah, you're right. What if
this? What if
yeah.
that? Okay, if so, so what? How does that affect me here today with these relationships, including the relationship with all the things I'm worried about? My job, my school, my team, my bedroom, my body, my kitchen, my gym.
That's a good question. Yeah.
What's your relationship? Because we've just talked about a number of relationships and where there are layers and layers of stress that are built in each one, both past, present, future, people, entities, environments. All the stress. Stress over food, stress over movement, stress over sleep, stress over sex, stress over death.
Yeah.
Stress over
You're making
drugs
a very good
and the
point.
drugs that other people use, including the foods they eat and the waters they eat, and whether they're doing diet soda or microbrew or tea or kombucha
Or bottled water.
right.
Mrs. Tap.
That's right.
I know.
It's
Fancy
drugs, right?
restaurant.
We're stressed over every
Everything.
drug down to from sugar to meth and everything in between. It's just like sugar to heroin and everything in between.
Yeah, we worry about all that nonstop, but we don't really worry about then what are you putting in your mind and doing with it to
So
fix
much
that
stress.
so it's not a
If so, so what?
yeah.
If so, so what? I mean, the manner in which so many people spin on a dime as it relates to their approach to cannabis is comical.
Yeah.
The moment they have no other options and they hear it might help reduce just a little bit of suffering.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest prohibitionists start giving their kids fucking ketamine
Yeah.
in hope of some marginal relief from
Just to
the
help 'em,
mind and the emotions that they're experiencing, right?
And
The stress.
You have to learn how to think by yourself in your own mind about things that you're thinking about because they're there. And then these whole new age strategies of then try to meditate and push it out. Well, that's all good, and you should, because you have to be able to help yourself get into the I was gonna say perinatal. Your nervous system, your calming nervous system. I don't know why I can't think of the word right now.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do that. But you also have to be able to not numb your thoughts.
Right.
You're going to have to think about them, and that is part of the meditation part. You can't meditate without also thinking. It's teaching you to focus on you, on what you are thinking about. One thought, even the whole. Anyway.
People have way too much imaginative positivity in their life and way too much actual experiential stress.
That's very interesting.
They imagine what it could be like if it was different, better, but they have actual, real, tangible, accessible knowledge about a traumatic event.
Yes.
This experience is in the agony, not the ecstasy.
Yeah. And okay, I want to. Oh,
Go ahead.
Do you want to go ahead? I was going to share earlier. Now that we're kind of back here about because of what you said, because of the actual traumatic event. When I was reading The Whole Brain Child, Dan Siegel and Tina something, they explained this.
One of those secular prophets.
They gave an example of this little 2-year-old that was in a car accident with his babysitter, and he was given to the cop, and the ambulance took away the babysitter, and everything turned out fine. But the parent, it might have been one of them as the parent that had to do this, or a story of theirs. But the mom knew to the little boy would be like, woo, woo, and he'd be bringing back this ambulance sound and get kind of scared. And so she would talk him through as much language as he had to tell his story, but would fill in. So what, woo, woo, that's right. You heard the ambulance came. You were in a crash. You were in a car crash with whoever, Jenny. The ambulance came, you're right. What else? Jenny off. And you're right, they came and took Jenny to the hospital. They had to take her to the doctor so the doctor could help her. And so the mom would give him the language to figure out his story, and it would last a couple weeks of just the scare, woo, woo. And because what he was remembering, right, were the two things: the scare, the ambulance, the crash, the ambulance, and Jenny's gone. I'm scared now with this, right? He was in a car accident too, at 2, but didn't have any language for that. And she, it stopped. He stopped bringing that up, and he was able to tell his story with total health. He wasn't scared of the car anymore. He wasn't scared that every time he's with Jenny, she's going to be taken away from him. The getting in a car and crashing, and someone's going to take mommy away. These are the way kids become traumatized. Is now anytime I'm in a car, what if something happens and I hear woo woo woo, mommy's going to be taken away, and they grow up being scared of something that is totally manageable by words and context. And so that is exactly what's happening to these adults. We are all traumatized as children, and we get stuck in these loops if we're not allowed to talk through our stories and given language to. Or you're not one that really thinks about that you really have to think through those things. And like I said with my client earlier, think through those experiences now with the language you have as a 15-year-old. Right? Mm-hmm. And with somebody who, even though it happened when you were 8, we're going to go back to when you were 8 and talk through it all now. But now as a teenager, fine. You have to be given, even as adults, we have to be given words to our stories, not just be, and like you said, psychotherapy, but we're telling our part.
Right.
There has to be help, through the
if they're
process.
going to a mental health professional, right? It's because there's some really, really distressing, destructive, invasive thoughts and behaviors that are really affecting your body.
That gets someone even go.
It's affecting relationship. Yeah.
I want help.
And yet modern cognitive behavioral, especially, first they're just stealing Eastern philosophy to try to do treatment. So if a modern mental health person, the best they got is EMDR or meditation or yoga, well, they're demonstrating their tools don't work, right? Go get a qualified guru then. Had a client who was, I have this very major sexual potential deviancy, and okay, what did you do? Well, we went to therapy, and let me get those notes. I'd like to read those. Do the Headspace app. Basically here to use this app, watch a YouTube video. This is the treatment that they're
providing.
Try to meditate.
Try to meditate. Like that word means one thing.
Right. That means because you know what that means, and this kid knows what it means, and these people know what it means, and you're not.
Yeah, that's helpful, psychologist.
Thanks. Anyway, you got derailed.
I did not help.
No. That's funny. And then in mental health, then what they do is they allow the patient to drive. Hey, things are really bad. You're really distressed. Some bad things may happen. Destructive behaviors. You're dealing with real tragedy. How would you like to solve this? What do you think? And they're not supposed to get in the way, and they just kind of guide the person as to what they want. Well, I want to maintain this relationship. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's try to give you strategies to maintain this relationship.
I'm still living with my abuser, but I'd really still like to.
Right.
I just want my abuser to love me differently.
Right.
Well, let's think of strategies that you can get. That's not possible.
Right.
That's not possible.
You do this marital therapy, and what it eventually does is just empower the least empathetic one to use this therapist's language and tools against the one.
Mm-hmm.
So it weaponizes therapy
Yeah.
for the person who has either the most power or the least empathy. Almost always. Almost always.
Yep.
Good marital therapy requires real honesty. And if it's difficult to get the people honest with themselves, about themselves, they're honest about their partner, they're not honest about themselves, and so the therapist is handicapped and blind about a lot of factors.
Yep.
But you're this tragedy, how stress is so directly related to tragedy and our response to tragedy and our physiological response and our cognitive response and our neurological response and our chemical response and how that affects our environmental response and it starts looking like personality. But it's not. It's a trauma loop of things that are happening. And you were talking earlier about the mind and kind of the some of your technical terms, but it seems like every tragedy is really filtered and responded to with one of two fractions of the mind: skepticism and mysticism. And the tragedy is something that happens for real to the body, to the mind, from something in the environment. And that tragedy fractures the mind. And the way to process it is it didn't happen, I misinterpreted, right? You're skeptical. Or you try to be hyper-rational. This means this means this means that. And you're building a story through the rational side of your brain, and usually it's one or the other because that tragedy was so impactful, it did violence to other portions of the mind that make it not able to process the experience. And then you have these kids, and I say kids because little brains, big brains.
I know.
We're all kids.
We all came from a little brain.
And then the little brain that was damaged by an adult.
Our sweet little brains, I know.
Often the rational reason side shuts down, and the imagination runs wild, and then the secrecy that shrouds the imagination builds more imagination, and they go to school and their teachers want them to activate this very other side of their brain, and they can't because they are constantly in this state.
And they might be right when they're shutting it off over here. There is these holes of just because if you do open it up, it unleashes all this. It's not, it's so sad.
And we rely. That's why the two great religions, skepticism and mysticism.
Because that's the other side. You're saying that
you can take every tragic arts has either a more skeptical vibe or a mystical vibe. And it doesn't matter which of the tragic arts, whether you're a healer, a teacher, or a protector. They're gonna lead, right? It's kind of like a sativa or indica. They all try to be hybrids, but they're all always dominant one and dominant the other. I mean, it's all these systems of the mind. Systems, because systems, we say the mind and the heart. Well, no, there's only the mind. The heart is a pump. Talk about the gut, that's different, but the heart is a pump. Emotions aren't in the heart, they're in the imagination centers of the mind, because everything is a think, every emotion is a thought. It just happens to be experienced and processed physiologically through the body. Experience is built on
experiences, which is the emotion, like the senses we took in to remember that experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's why
emotions are things. Really,
all of these are almost forms of the healing arts, the tragic arts, the protective arts, the educational arts, the developmental arts. Because all of this is about development, human development, transitioning from aquatic creature to fully formed adult human. And the stages between those are so interesting and impactful.
And when you said emotions are things, then there really are tools. Our mind is powerful, and there are tools to think through those things and train your brain to handle those things through when you're scared, when you're triggered, whatever, all of it. We have a tool, big brains, to really work through the mysticism and the skepticism of an experience.
And relying only on one. And especially when we become an enemy to the other. And that's very interesting when ideologies and systems become an enemy to mysticism or an enemy to skepticism. Because that's when dogmas come in. And that's really what you can look at. You can look at these skeptical, secular dogmas and these religious, mystical dogmas. Yes. And some of these secular, mystical dogmas and these religious, skeptical dogmas, they happen all these ways. I mean, look at the you just have to look at the schisms within Christianity. All these billions of people saying, well, we're all Christian. No, you all simply have the same character in your story.
Yeah.
But you neither share the same rituals, the same theology, the same systems. like they're not the same. You just believe in the same character.
Yeah.
It's
and change the story however you want
right.
to believe
So
your
no,
character work.
The character actually meant this.
Yeah.
Philosophically.
This is what that meant. Yeah.
It's
and whose belief gets to be right.
And you have this idea of skepticism versus mysticism is found in religions, and it's where they're divided. And it's where, again, the secular skeptical world is divided. And we have all these fractures because this is how people respond to tragedy, either generally with hyper skepticism or hyper mysticism.
That's true.
When there's
gotta be
very little balance. Yeah. There's very little balance. And that impacts the development of the little brains so that the little brains can never fully develop into big brains, and those big brains that are fully developed are never fully activated.
That's true, because when they're taught to be, it's like they grow up with those, the hourglass things. They can only see through that lens of just that type of thinking, and it's not a full picture at all.
Right.
That is crazy.
And
because you take it off and see the whole crystal ball.
You see people who are magical thinkers. Right, and they're often found in among the religious, but not always. And this is the idea of spiritual bypassing. You're just always, right, in this imagination, this magic thinking. Everything's going to turn out wonderfully. Why? Because I say it so. It's magical thinking. And we think of magical thinkers as uneducated and as fundamentalists, because often there is magic in fundamentalist thinking, right? Santa Claus is real. That is the spirit of the holidays. It becomes so literal. And then you grow up and you realize, but there is a Santa Claus. There is. We provided evidence of Santa Claus. Why do children believe in Santa Claus? Oh, because the people that they love and care about the most, that have kept them safe and protected, have literally, intentionally taken steps to ensure that there is physical evidence of this being. For the first 5 or 6 years in their life, and then they're called dumb for believing their parent. And I say, take a lesson on that. But there's evidence. And now we can talk about a literal story versus metaphor. And the main concept was that there is a being who's very powerful that loves you very much, and even when you're naughty, you're good, and therefore we celebrate your life. That's the message that's trying to be communicated. Now, other people have different mythologies, and it gets twisted into this theocratic being who will punish you and hurt you for thoughts in your head. So we don't all share the same stories. We don't share the same Christian stories. We don't have the same mythology, philosophy, or ritual, which is to say we don't have the same morals just because you quote unquote believe that some dude named Jesus existed and was a great man and in fact was literally God. We can believe all of those words in that order are true and be so far away from what that actually means. If so, so what? Because I'm less interested in your Jesus than I am your God. I dig the human expression of an all-powerful deity. I'm more interested in the characteristics, attributes, and morals of that being that is God, the non-human concept, organism, conscious reverberation. Because when a person tells me about that being, it tells me everything about A, what a type of a parent they are, and what type of a person they are. It especially tells you about their parenting and whether or not they're risky or safe. Because all theology is a response to tragedy.
Yeah. You said the people that they'll tell you about their Jesus though, but some people, is that what you said?
I'm cool with the human expression of this deity.
Yeah.
Like I get that. Everybody, we all believe in that God. But where the schism of Christianity, that's where the divide is. It's a philosophical, theological divide of whether or not the Holy Spirit is expressed through the Father or through the Father and the Son.
Yeah. Okay.
And that starts mattering from a Christian perspective because it matters cosmically.
Yeah.
It matters morally. It affects often one's ritual and mythology.
That's very true.
And
I got stuck on because I'm like, a lot of people claim to love and know the same Jesus, but it does stray from there, and that's what I was.
A great example. You got the Orthodox.
True.
You got the Eastern, the Western, right? You got that great schism.
Yeah.
But then you have this other group that can't really be. There's these other, especially, this modern Americana religions.
Yes.
And it's like the Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
There's some would say Scientologists, but I think that's a whole nother because they're not real. That's almost a different. It's almost different. It's a different religion.
Yeah.
But you got Seventh-day Adventists. Jehovah's Witness arguably is in there, and then there's another one. There's the other one out west. There's the polygamous. Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
The musical that the South Park guys did, right?
Yes.
There's those ones.
Yeah.
And they're just a completely different Christian than these two great, these schisms.
Yeah.
Because of their mythology.
Yeah. Same.
Their philosophy. They stole the same philosophy.
Same Jesus story, but that is completely different than their philosophy.
I dig your man Jesus, dude. It's your God that is not the same here.
That is where yes.
And that's really why so many Christians just simply say, these Salt Lake City people, the polygamists, the Brighamites
Yeah.
are not really Christian because of their theology
Yeah.
and their concept of deity.
Yeah.
In this question, that was a great question of the right. That and polygamy, that was another.
Yeah. Well, they don't believe in polygamy currently,
today,
but they're
today
still in Salt
that I
Lake
hear,
City, so
that
we'll
I
say,
hear,
yeah.
Theologically, they do.
Kidding, I know they.
Again, I asked what their heaven is like and what their God is, and I understand their God is a polygamist.
Yeah. And so is the history.
And so is the people
they're very
that
proud
have
of.
died
Yeah.
are currently in heaven
Yes.
polygamous. So I think it's fair theologically, philosophically, and mythologically, and ritualistically to say that Salt Lake group are polygamists.
Yes. Oh, and we're going to call them polygamists
Okay.
also, but
So let's call them
we'll call them
if we talk about that group, because it's very different than Christians. So we can talk about Christians, but then within Christians there are groups, right? We should distinguish between like Catholics, Protestant, Eastern Orthodox, right? Because there's a theological difference as it relates to both authority, concept of God, authority, and duty.
Okay.
Because not every Christian sect,
Yeah.
right? The joy of sects.
That's a good one.
shares the same concept of deity,
Yes.
authority, or duty.
It is very important to understand too, and we've done a lot of thinking on that matter because it's different.
It is different. It's different philosophically. It's different systemically. It's different, and it affects. You know what it affects? It affects tragedy. It affects stress. The way people approach their religions, their theology, simply has an impact on one's stress. It either assists with or assists with that tragic stress, or it contributes to it. And sometimes it does both, and isn't that fun?
Yeah.
It does both. And so the areas that the theology, that religion, whether it be secular or sacred, whether it be a skeptical or a mystical approach, right, is how does that system, that philosophy, that ritual, that mythology impact your relationships, violence, drugs, sex, sleep, diet, movement. And mood. How does that thought system, because that's what all theologies, religious systems are. They are thought methodologies. They're thought systems. How do those impact those things?
That
Mood,
is so good. Thought system.
movement, diet, sleep, sex, drugs, violence, relationships. Because these thought systems sure do have a lot to say about each of those things.
Sure do.
The one thing that both the secular and the sacred, the religious and the secular have in common is they all say, we know better and you can trust us.
Yeah.
So it becomes an evaluation is, do they know better on these areas? And should they be trusted?
Yeah. Yeah. Should they be trusted? I like that. I was going to say, and can they be trusted, but should they?
Before we hear what you have to say, you should
Yeah.
establish your credibility for why anyone should listen to you. Let alone take what you have to say seriously. Because sometimes you listen to someone and don't take them seriously because you find them entertaining.
Yeah, true.
But they're asking to be trusted and be taken seriously. And they're asking to have impact and control over the lives, which is to say the body and minds of your children. And they're most prevalent within these religious organizations and these political organizations.
Yes.
They
Yes.
control
classrooms, crime scenes, and courtrooms.
Yes.
They control them. They control them through their influence, through their power, through their discretion, through their money, through their lobbying. It ultimately has impact over the lives of real people, real families. So, or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.